Before anything begins, a quiet warning flashes across the screen: viewer discretion advised. The segment you are about to watch is for entertainment, but the atmosphere forming inside the studio feels anything but light. What happens when a quiet storm walks straight into a room designed to take whispers, amplify them, and turn them into wildfire? The answer begins the moment the live audience settles into their seats. Bright stage lights sharpen overhead like 1,000 watchful eyes, illuminating every corner of the set with an intensity that feels strangely alive. The energy shifts with a pulse you can almost sense beneath your skin. Subtle at first, then undeniable. Bryan steps onto the stage with his familiar, easy stride, but the room reacts differently today. Something heavier floats in the air. Something that makes camera operators lean in, and the sound crew instinctively turn their dials a little higher. At the table, Behar waits with the kind of poised, measured smile that suggests she already knows the trajectory of the next few minutes. As Luke sits, the room seems to pause. Conversations taper off, the buzzing machinery slows, and the entire studio holds its breath. It is as if everyone, audience, crew, even the walls, sense a collision coming. A ripple of anticipation courses through the space, building like a wave gathering strength. Joy's eyes narrow with a glimmer of playful challenge, while Luke's jaw tightens with the calm steadiness of someone who refuses to be caught off guard. The first question drops, soft in tone, but edged with something sharp, something intentional. It slices the air cleanly, leaving a charged silence in its wake. Luke hears it, measures it, and lets the pause linger just long enough to draw every heartbeat in the studio into the same rhythm. Something flickers behind his eyes, something the audience feels but cannot yet name. A stagehand halts mid-movement, a producer inhales sharply. No one knows how Luke will respond, but everyone recognizes this as the moment the fuse begins to burn. Yet the storm didn't start on camera. It began earlier, in the quiet corners backstage, long before the lights blazed awake. When Bryan arrived, earlier than expected, the corridor hummed with a tension that felt almost electric, like the air moments before lightning splits open the sky. He walked with his usual laid-back confidence, but beneath it lived something more cautious, more alert. He has weathered tough interviews before, but today feels unfamiliar, marked by an uneasiness he can't quite shake. Meanwhile, Behar sits in her dressing room, the glow of her mirror reflecting a face seasoned by decades in television. She flips through her note cards, pausing each time her eyes land on a particular question, one wrapped in controversy, one chosen with precision. She taps the card lightly against the desk, a silent rhythm of calculation. She isn't nervous. She is ready. In the control room, producers whisper urgently, their eyes darting between screens. They know Joy's tendencies. They know Luke's straightforward nature, and they know that pairing them could become combustible with the wrong spark. But no warning is given. No one dares interfere. The stakes are too high. Meanwhile, the audience trickles in, cheerful and unbothered, snapping selfies, finding seats, completely unaware of the storm tightening its grip behind the scenes. They don't notice the stage manager pacing faster than usual, or the producer's rigid shoulders. They are here for entertainment, unaware that they might soon witness a moment capable of rattling daytime television. Luke stands near the stage entrance, rolling his shoulders, shaking off tension. Joy emerges from her dressing room, carrying herself with rehearsed calm. Their eyes meet for a single heartbeat, brief, electric, volatile. The stage manager announces they are live-in moments. Luke nods, Joy smiles. The crew stiffens. Somewhere deep inside the studio walls, the storm stretches awake. The show begins with deceptive gentleness. The lights warm the set, the audience smiles, and Luke responds with that familiar southern charm. Joy welcomes him with a sweet tone, but beneath it lies a blade. For a few fleeting seconds, the moment feels harmless, almost friendly. Two professionals exchanging polite words. But beneath that calm surface, the current is already shifting. And everyone who has ever lived through a televised storm knows. It is always quietest just before everything breaks open. Instead of simply sitting beneath the burning glare of live television, Bryan finds himself in a moment suspended between calm and collision. Behar lifts her first cue card, and though her fingers hesitate for barely half a second, so quick most of the audience would never notice, Luke does. His eyes track every inch of her movement like a man who has spent his entire life reading a room before choosing his next step. The smile on Joy's face deepens, but the warmth behind it has already evaporated. She leans in with controlled breath and perfect posture, delivering her opening question in a voice so soft, so deceptively gentle, it feels almost dangerous, The moment the words slip into the air, the atmosphere changes, not loudly, not dramatically, but sharply. It's the kind of shift that feels like a sudden drop in temperature, a quiet signal that something underneath the surface has just tilted. Luke senses it instantly. The audience senses it too, though they cannot yet explain the strange tension prickling faintly across the room. Even the crew behind the cameras straighten almost in unison, their facial expressions tightening around the edges, as if their bodies instinctively know they should brace for impact. Luke lets the question settle between them for a heartbeat. Then another. The silence thickens just enough to grab the room's full attention, yet not long enough to make him appear unsure. His jaw shifts slightly, the muscle tightening and relaxing with the control of someone who knows exactly how much power sits in a pause. His eyes flicker with something measured, something steady, as though he is calculating the exact weight of Joy's first move. When he finally speaks, his answer is polite and smooth. His voice fills the studio with an effortless warmth, but underneath it lies a quiet warning, a boundary wrapped in calm courtesy. Joy tilts her head, her gaze sharp as she studies every detail: his posture, his tone, the steady, unshaken fire behind his eyes. Her smile widens. She feels it, he feels it, and the room, every inch of it, feels the growing tension ripple outward like a subtle vibration beneath the laughter of the audience. Luke shifts in his seat, grounding himself with the instinct of a man who has spent years beneath blinding lights and unpredictable crowds. His hand stays still, resting neatly on his lap, but one finger curls inward just slightly, a tiny spark of focus flaring quietly inside him. Joy moves to her next point. Her voice dips into that familiar blend of humor and provocation that makes her both beloved and feared on daytime television. She circles back to Luke's previous answer with precision, pushing just enough to thicken the air again. The audience chuckles lightly, unaware they're drifting closer to the center of a flame they cannot yet see. Luke studies her carefully. His expression remains even, composed. But something flashes, quick, bright, unmistakable, like the first spark catching on dry wood. He leans in just an inch, answering with a touch more weight. His tone stays calm, but now there is an undertone, a subtle signal that he knows exactly where Joy is trying to steer the conversation, and he has no intention of stepping aside. The temperature in the room rises by a single perceptible degree, soft but real, a quiet warning humming through the air like a whisper from the future. One of the producers inhales sharply behind the camera. A stagehand freezes mid-step near the far corner of the set. Joy's smile twitches, brief, tight, but enough to show that she, too, felt the spark. Luke holds her gaze, letting the silence stretch a fraction longer than necessary. The moment lands like a slow, rolling drumbeat. For several seconds, the conversation settles again into something gentle. The lights glow warmly overhead. The audience relaxes into easy smiles. Luke leans back slightly, offering a light-hearted grin that earns a wave of applause. For a heartbeat, it feels like they have found a rhythm, smooth, friendly, balanced. That illusion survives exactly 5 seconds. Joy's fingers brush the edge of her cue card. Luke catches the movement immediately. The air shifts. She glances down at the card, then back up, her smile bright but sharpened around the edges. She releases her next question, light, humorous, charming, and yet there is weight tucked inside it, a challenge dressed up as casual curiosity. The audience laughs. Luke does not. He feels the pressure settle across his spine, not painful, not overwhelming, but enough to pull him into sharper focus. He exhales softly, straightens in his chair, and answers with deliberate precision. Calm, clear, controlled. His voice never strains, never stumbles. He meets the challenge head-on. Joy's eyes narrow with a flicker of calculation. She leans in, elbows shifting forward, posture tightening. The room goes still. Luke leans forward with him, delivering his next line with a clarity that slices clean through the space. The audience reacts with a ripple of surprise and laughter. Joy blinks, recovers and smiles, bright, polished, but tighter than before. The storm has officially begun. Behind the cameras, a producer stiffens. Another freezes with his hand still hovering over a monitor, as if someone pressed pause on the entire control room. Luke notices every detail. He always does. The tightening faces, the quickened breaths, the subtle but unmistakable shift in energy. He feels it move through the room like a low current of electricity, restless and searching for a point to strike. Joy lifts her next card. Luke's fingers curl, barely perceptible, tightening against his knee. The silence stretches, thick and heavy, turning the space between them into something almost tangible. And in that suspended heartbeat, a realization drifts across the studio. Quiet, invisible, but absolute. It's It settles like distant thunder rolling across a wide, open sky. This isn't the peak. This is the beginning. Every person watching can feel it in their bones. Joy doesn't wait. The moment the audience's laughter dies, she leans forward with a spark in her eyes that makes even the most seasoned crew members shift uneasily. Her fingertips press into the next card, the thin paper bending under her grip, and she delivers her next question. It's sharper than the last, heavier too, aimed with the precision of someone who knows exactly where to press, exactly where the fault lines lie. Her tone stays light, sweet, even, but the words cut clean through the air like a velvet-wrapped blade. Luke hears the shift before he fully processes the question. His back straightens by a fraction. His jaw tightens. It's instinctive, almost reflexive. The warmth in his smile cools into something steadier, something grounded. The tension lands between them with the weight of a stone, sinking into the conversation with deliberate finality. He answers without flinching. No hesitation, no stumble. His voice remains calm, smooth, composed. But there is steel beneath it now, threaded through each syllable like a quiet warning. Every word lands with precise clarity, firm enough to draw a boundary, controlled enough to keep the exchange civil. Joy listens with a smile that looks thinner now, stretched tight across something unreadable. She doesn't retreat. She circles back, reframes the question, pushes again, this time with more force, enough to make the energy on set flicker dangerously. The lights seem warmer. The audience grows still, leaning forward but afraid to make a sound. Every breath in the studio halts between anticipation and dread. Luke lifts his chin, his eyes sharpen not in anger but in focus. A quiet resolve forms behind them. He isn't being cornered today. Not by anyone. His reply comes sharper now, though still polite, firm, measured and unmistakably final. It's a boundary drawn with surgical precision. A ripple moves through the audience, a collective breath almost, but not quite escaping. Everyone feels it. The conversation has crossed an invisible threshold. Their words turn into quiet weapons, nothing shouted, nothing crude. Just pointed phrases, exchanged with perfect restraint, each edged with meaning. Joy fires another question. Luke meets it head-on, with a cutting calm. The temperature rises degree by slow degree, until the air vibrates with the pressure of two forces refusing to yield. A co-host shifts uncomfortably, her smile faltering. Another tries to jump in with a cheerful, nervous comment, an attempt to break the tension. But the moment her voice enters the space, the atmosphere swallows it whole. She fades instantly. The conversation belongs to Joy and Luke now. Everyone else is a spectator to a duel they never anticipated. Joy leans in, voice sharpening into the rhythm she uses to corner her guests. Her eyebrow lifts, daring him. The next question drops onto the table like a small explosion. The audience goes silent, completely silent. No coughs, no shuffling, just sheer breathless stillness. Luke exhales once, controlled and precise. His shoulders loosen, but his gaze locks onto hers with unshakable steadiness. He leans forward, just slightly signaling that he's not rattled, not intimidated, not moving. His response lands with calm, unmistakable force. A verbal counterpunch delivered with perfect composure. Even the cameras seem to lean in, hungry to capture every flicker of the unfolding moment. The co-hosts glance at one another, worry tightening around their eyes. They know they can't interrupt. They can only watch as the balance shifts, slowly at first, then unmistakably. Joy pushes. Luke pushes back, not with aggression, but with grounded strength. A strength that tilts the entire table. Joy feels it. A flash in her smile betrays her just for a second. Her eyes dart to the producers, searching for a sign she hasn't gone too far, but she snaps back instantly, refusing to show an inch of weakness. The silence between exchanges deepens. Every word becomes a weapon, every breath a signal, every shift of posture a move in a chess match neither is willing to lose. The power begins to slide, across the table, across the room, toward Luke. His voice steadies further. Joy's questions gain edge but lose impact. The audience feels the shift. Their focus locks onto Luke, drawn to the calm fire rising behind his eyes. What began as a standard interview has become something else entirely. A collision course. A storm with no escape route, and everyone knows the moment of impact is coming. Slowly at first, then all at once. Joy leans in with the confidence of someone certain she's about to land the final blow. The lights flicker across her face, revealing defiance and daring. She inhales and asks the question that's been waiting like a loaded trap. The words drop like a match into gasoline. The room freezes. One camera cuts to Luke, catching the exact moment his eyes widen, not in shock, but in recognition. He knows exactly what she's trying to do. He doesn't move. Not yet. His hands remain still on his lap, fingers relaxed, posture perfectly controlled, but his jaw shifts with a quiet, decisive click that echoes louder than any spoken word. In the suddenly chilled air of the studio, it feels as though someone has opened a door and invited a gust of cold wind straight through the set. The moment has changed again, sharper, deeper, unmistakably different. Luke lifts his gaze. It is steady, unblinking, unshaken. The nearest camera instinctively zooms in, drawn to him as if it understands that what happens next will not just land, but leave a mark. Joy smiles at him, wearing the expression of someone confident she has secured the upper hand. It is polished, practiced, bright in all the ways television demands. But the edges wobble for the briefest flicker when Luke finally moves. He leans forward slowly, deliberately, resting his elbows lightly on his knees. The studio lights catch the steel in his eyes, igniting the controlled fire simmering just beneath his calm exterior. He doesn't rush. He lets the silence grow thick again, lets it saturate the room until even the air feels stretched tight enough to snap. Everyone waits. Joy, the co-hosts, the audience, the crew, even the unseen viewers watching from home. And when he finally speaks, the power in his voice is not loud or angry. It is low, clear, more dangerous than any outburst could ever be. His words slice through the air with surgical precision. Sharp, clean, devastating. Someone in the audience gasps. Another whispers, "Oh my God," barely able to contain the shock. The camera closest to Luke wobbles as the operator instinctively reacts, as if the sheer weight of the moment pushed him off balance. Joy's smile collapses. Her eyes widen with the first visible crack of genuine surprise. Her facade slips just long enough to expose the raw shock underneath. She opens her mouth, tries to speak, but nothing comes out. Her throat tightens. She grips the edge of the table, knuckles whitening as she tries to steady herself in the sudden turbulence. The other hosts shift uncomfortably, panic flickering through their expressions. One tries to interject with a shaky, over-bright tone, but her voice dies halfway out as she realizes the moment is too big to cut into. Too sharp, too consequential. Chaos erupts in the control room. Producers wave their arms wildly. Sound engineers scramble across consoles. Someone shouts to switch camera angles, and red lights flash across the board like an alarm. Yet on the studio floor, everything remains frozen in place. Luke leans back again, collected, unnervingly composed. The fire in his eyes cools into something even more powerful, certainty. He knows what he just did. The audience knows. Joy knows. Everyone in the room can feel the seismic shift as the balance of power slams completely and decisively into his hands. Joy exhales shakily. She looks down at her cards, flipping them in a desperate search for grounding that simply isn't there anymore. The silence returns, thicker than before, suffocating. Heavy enough to feel like an extra presence in the room. The audience shifts, unsure whether to clap or simply stare. A camera zooms in on Joy's stunned face. Another swings back to Luke, capturing the quiet force radiating off him. The kind of power that doesn't need volume to dominate a space. Time stretches. Brolds. Then the dam bursts. The audience erupts, some cheering, some shouting, some covering their mouths. The hosts exchange frantic glances. Joy tries to recover, but her voice falters, every attempt swallowed by the enormity of what has just happened. The View has weathered storms before, but never one like this. Not one that cracks the entire atmosphere open and leaves it changed forever. When the show cuts to commercial, the shockwave explodes beyond the studio. Producers rush into the hallway, whispering urgently. In the control room, someone mutters, "This is going to blow up," and another answers, "It already has." Within minutes, audience members upload grainy clips to social media. The footage spreads at lightning speed. Twitter ignites, hashtags erupting, comments pouring in with the intensity of a digital stampede. Some praise Luke for speaking with clarity and strength. Others defend Joy with equal force. The debate becomes its own battleground. Celebrities join in, offering opinions that only feed the fire. Entertainment sites publish headlines within minutes. Every micro-expression becomes evidence. Every word becomes a storyline. Inside the studio, paparazzi gather outside like a storm cloud waiting to burst. Producers huddle around a table in a crisis meeting, playing the clip again and again, each frame a new problem to solve. Words like backlash, public statement, and damage control swirl around the room like warning sirens. Meanwhile, Luke walks quietly down a hallway, his phone vibrating nonstop. Messages flood in, friends checking on him, fans cheering, industry voices sending disbelief, support, or both. He reads none of them. For the first time all morning, he exhales, steady, grounded, certain. Everything has changed, And everyone knows it. A few critics hurl harsh words at him online, but Luke scrolls past them with a slow, steady breath, unshaken and almost serene. He understands the weight of what happened. He knows the moment was bigger than anything anyone on set expected. It landed with a force that rippled outward instantly. But he also knows he spoke from conviction, and that certainty anchors him in the center of the storm, now brewing around him. Joy, on the other hand, retreats into her dressing room, closing the door with a soft but telling click. Her shoulders tighten as she sinks into a chair, pulling out her phone with trembling fingers. Her notifications explode with noise. Some messages glow with support, others strike with brutal precision. Her fans rally behind her with fierce loyalty, defending her tone, her stance, her right to push boundaries. Yet the backlash hits just as hard. She exhales slowly, pressing her fingertips against her temples as if trying to hold herself steady against the avalanche pouring through the screen. Outside, the studio hallway hums with whispers. Crew members exchange wide-eyed looks, replaying the moment in their minds like a scene from a film they're not entirely convinced was real. One mutters, "We just made history." Another replies under his breath, "History or trouble, it's too early to tell." But one thing is certain, the confrontation didn't end when the cameras stopped. It spread, fast, fierce, impossible to contain, through Hollywood, social media, and every corner of the entertainment world. Within minutes, the moment took on a life of its own, growing louder, shaping narratives, dividing opinions, and pulling millions into its gravitational pull. The studio building, once just a workplace, now feels like the epicenter of an earthquake, its tremors still echoing across the world. When the cameras finally go dark and the initial chaos thins, the truths no one dared say aloud begin to seep through the cracks, behind closed doors. Away from the noise, away from the flashing lights, deeper motivations rise slowly to the surface. Luke sits quietly in a small waiting room, the buzz of his phone muffled beneath the cushion beside him. He isn't angry, he isn't rattled. He's reflective, replaying every word with a calm clarity that comes from knowing exactly why he responded the way he did. He entered the studio expecting challenge, ready to defend himself. But he wasn't expecting that question, the kind loaded with history, implication, and intention. Yet deep inside, he knows he had been carrying that answer long before today. Joy, isolated in her own space, faces a different truth. The question she asked, the one that ignited everything, wasn't improvised. It wasn't a slip. It was a choice. A card she debated, hesitated on, nearly removed. But in the end, she kept it because she felt compelled to push, to probe, to spark something real. She didn't predict the explosion, but she lit the fuse knowingly, and now she must stand in the wake of the choice she made long before Luke sat across from her. Down the hallway, crew members whisper in stunned, hushed tones. A stagehand describes how the air felt heavier seconds before the final blow landed. A camera operator swears he saw Luke's eyes shift right before his now famous line, like a warning only those closest could sense. A producer admits they had feared a moment like this might erupt one day. Just not today, not with these two, and not on live television. Little details trickle out. Joy had scrapped 3 earlier questions minutes before the show. Luke paced more backstage than he usually did. The control room had prepared 2 backup segments, just in case. A decision that now feels eerily prophetic. In the quiet after the storm, with truth finally unmasked, something becomes painfully clear. The explosion wasn't caused by a single question. It was years of pressure, perspective, and expectation converging into one electrifying second. Everyone in the room sensed, in some instinctive way, that there was far more beneath the surface than the world saw. In the days that follow, the moment settles into Hollywood lore, replayed with the reverence usually reserved for legendary scenes. Commentators call it a turning point. Fans call it unforgettable. Insiders whisper that it marks the start of a shift, one where unscripted truth cuts deeper than any polished segment ever could. Luke's calm fire, Joy's unwavering push, 2 forces colliding with enough intensity that the world could feel the impact. Weeks later, people still talk about the silence before Luke delivered his defining line. The collective gasp, the flicker in Joy's expression, the way the camera captured every microsecond as though documenting history. It becomes a reference point, a story retold on late-night shows, podcasts, fan forums, and behind closed doors in industry meetings. Hollywood has seen countless confrontations, but this one feels different. Raw, authentic, personal. A moment where reality slipped through the cracks of entertainment and became something unforgettable. A moment that will be remembered. a moment that will be replayed, a moment that, in its own unexpected way, changed everything.